Okay, so in this series, we're going to look at several approaches to doing CG integration with Nuke and Maya. This series is going to look at footage shot on a proper camera, like an AJA Scion with a nice lens, which has distorted footage. So unlike the basic workflow that we did before, which came off an iPhone, where the iPhone undistorts the footage for us, this plate actually has distortion baked into it that we have to work around. So we're going to look at taking a plate like this and working with it as a distorted plate. We're going to look at undistorting it, match moving it on that undistorted footage. We're going to look at building set geometry into it. We're going to look at making image planes to go into Maya, exporting scenes into Maya, generating HDRIs from a set of bracketed images, correcting that HDRI. We're going to look at Maya setup, how to set up the AI matte shadow material, and we're also going to look at doing a test render in Maya and getting it into Nuke. We're going to look at some basic AOVs and some basic ways to put foreground over our background, and we're also going to look at 3D marker removal in Nuke, and on top of all of that, we're going to look at the denoise and renoise workflow. So, with a comp like this, it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed, but if we just break it down into its component parts, it's a pretty simple affair. Now, I get asked quite a lot which order things should go in, so what I want to do first is just step through this comp from the top to the bottom and go through the order in which things are comped, but also the order in which things are produced. So what I've done here is I've made this script so that each of these bright yellow backdrops has a write node in them, and the height of this box, these yellow boxes, relative to everything else, is pretty much the order, the rough order in which this shot should be done. So if we start at the top, the very top yellow box is where we are taking our original camera data, our OCD plate, retiming it, which there are separate tutorials on, and writing it out into a plate that we're going to use. So this is the start of our B stream. It's the first write node that we have to do, and this B stream goes all the way down to the end of the comp. So before we can really do anything, what we have to do first, if we look for the next yellow box down, so if I draw a line here, and the next yellow box we get to is this area here. So this is solving the distortion. That would be the next step. So this relies on us having some footage that we've shot with some lens grids, and we can solve the distortion and solve the focal length as well, based on this footage here. So we need to do that before we start tracking, before we start doing any match move. The footage has to be accurately undistorted. If we look for the next yellow box down, so we've done the right node at the top, we've done this one. The next ones are, you'll notice they're all pretty much together. It's these boxes here. So this pretty much has to be done all at the same time. On the left, we've got the HDRI workflow. So this is taken each of our brackets from our Ricoh Theta camera, taking it into Photoshop, bringing it out of Photoshop into Nuke, doing some white balance to it, and writing it out as a white balanced HDRI. At the same time, we have to make some set geometry, which we use the undistorted plate for, with the match move done on the undistorted plate, and that set geometry goes to Maya. And then finally we've got this undistorted image plane, which also goes to Maya. So these three tasks here are basically have to be done at the same time. They don't have to be done in any particular order, but before we can get to these, we do have to do our match move, which is here. There are no yellow boxes associated with this. It's really this one here. you'll notice one more yellow box down here. This represents the undistorted plate that we're going to take to Maya. So just to get, this confuses a few people, so just to get off the ground quickly, what I want to do is make an image plane for Maya, which is undistorted, into an EXR sequence written out as ACG, with the markers and everything still in it. That's just so I can get rendering quickly, so I can get testing quickly, and then by the time I've spent some time doing that, at a later stage, I'm going to be painting those markers out. That didn't go to plan. And writing those out as an undistorted plate. So ignore these black spots. We'll look into what's causing that in a moment. But that marker removal can be done sort of halfway through your project. So for now, we're just going to work with the tracker markers still on the shot, and then eventually we will paint them out and pass them over to Maya. So in the final shot, they are removed. So that's the kind of rough order of processes. Now, in terms of the actual comp itself, let's have a look at the order in which the comp itself is done, just to give you an overview of that. Okay, so I just had to restart Nuke there because there was a little glitch with the lens distortion node, which was causing things to render black. So here we are, where we're going to go through, looking through this comp one node at a time, from top to bottom, to look at the order in which everything is done. So we've already had a look at this little sequence here. So we've gone from the original plate, which is quite a long shot, quite slow. We chopped out a little portion of that with a retime node and sped it up slightly, sped it up 5 times in this case. And then we wrote that out as a plate. So this plate, because it's been retimed set to the nearest frame, it's perfectly valid to do our denoise here. So the next node in our chain is a denoise node. Now this node probably needs shuffling about to reevaluate it, because I have had this script closed and open again, and I did have to restart to get that to activate. So you do have to be a little bit careful with this denoise node. When I first opened this node, you might have seen a red strap across the top saying it hasn't sampled an area, so sometimes just giving it a little nudge like this will reinvigorate it somewhat. So don't go off my settings here. You have to find the right settings for your particular shot. So that's the next node in the B stream. And just a reminder, whenever I talk about the B stream, I'm talking about this vertical line from our plate, or our very furthest back thing, to our right node. So it's a vertical line that runs all the way through the comp. There's no reason why any comp can't have one of these. So it's important to note that we work on the distorted plate whenever we're doing the comp. This plate never gets undistorted and things get added to it. We're working on the distorted original plate all the way through. So after the denoise, we do some marker removal. Now, this setup might be unfamiliar to you. Don't worry about that. You can remove the markers by whatever means necessary. So whether that be linking them to trackers and doing clones, using the in-paint node, by whatever means possible. So that is where the marker removals go. Now, it's an over because I'm not working on the B stream as such. What I'm doing is I'm preparing little patches. And these little patches, or little stickers, get stuck over the plate to remove those markers. So if we follow the B stream along, the next node we come down to is a merge node. And this merge node, if we follow the A stream from it, it's a little bit of CGI. So here we have a sugar bowl, which is at the back of the shot behind the Rubik's Cube. So that's the shadow for it. And ignore the fact that it's just smashed over the top, because what we're ultimately doing is breaking it out into parts and applying some corrections to it. We're doing some Z defocus, and then the key is here that we are distorting this render to go over our plate. We're not understorting the plate, putting CG over and then redistorting the whole thing. We're redistorting our CG. So that just gets slapped on top. That's it before and then after. And most comps work like this, so it's this idea of kind of destroying something and then fixing it, or trashing it and repairing it. So we trash it here by just sticking a sugar bowl over the top of everything, and then the next thing we want to do is repair that foreground by cutting out a piece of the foreground. So here I'm just doing some roto using a planar tracker. So I'm making an alpha, and I'm copying that alpha using a copy node into the B stream to give me a Rubik's Cube or some foreground that is cut out. That cube then goes over. So before we had the sugar bowl, and then that's the cube going back over. And then there's a little bit of an edge treatment here going on by means of copying the alpha from the roto into the B stream and then using an edge blur node, which is just going to soften the edge. If we look at it, that is, it's going to soften the edge just a little bit. It's going to blur the background into the foreground. So we don't want our edge blur node to be up here in our A stream. We want it to be here in our B stream. It's also masked by the actual alpha of the CGI itself. So it's only going to affect the area where the sugar bowl is occurring, which is around here. If we didn't have this mask attached, what would happen is we would get a blurry edge where we haven't affected the plate. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's our marker removal, sugar bowl, Rubik's Cube back in. So the next part of the comp is all of the foreground CGI. So by foreground CGI, I'm talking about anything that sits in front of this Rubik's Cube. So, or at least doesn't include it. So we've got another sugar bowl at the back, a teacup with a bowl, whatever this is called, a teapot, and then some spheres, and another teacup with an egg in it. This goes through the same or similar treatment, where we are splitting out the AOVs, grading the shadows, applying some lens to it, and then putting that over the top of everything. This little piece here was just serving as reference material. It's discarded now, it's unused. This was part of a previous tutorial that we're just going to get rid of. And then the next nodes in our B stream are the regrain process. So this is using the dash grain node, and we take our comp in here. We use a matte coming from the difference between our degrained plate and our comp to give us a mask for our denoise, and then we write it out. So this is the result, and what we should find is we've got our plate and our render pretty much looking identical, save for the fact that it's got some CG teapots and spheres built into it now.